computer. And I think it says we're recording. Okay. So here we go. Hi, Dr. Susan Kaye here from Integrative Mind Body Therapies Institute, LLC. Here with Kim Caldwell, who is an interior designer who works with interior psychology. Now, this is totally a new field that Kim is being very innovative with, and I'm not one bit surprised because I know Kim's mother. We've been in each other's lives for 40 years at least. And so I've watched Kim grow up and go through a lot of different phases. And here she ends up in our field, which we're very excited about. And I'll mostly let Kim tell you about her work because she does many other types of interior or design work. But I need to read you a quote that she sent me from her website, right in line with what we do. At the heart of everything is capturing someone's unique essence in a way that they may not be able to articulate. That is so right on with the work that we do. And Kim and I were talking earlier, it's like, it's sometimes hard for folks to articulate what their needs, wants, and desires are. And sometimes they don't even know themselves how to articulate. And so it's on us to ask the right question. And we get that through a therapeutic process. And Kim agrees that that's what she's learning in her interior psychology process. So Kim, I'm just going to hand it over to you and fill us in. What's going on?
Well, thank you, Susan. Thank you for having me. And it is really incredible to do this with you, especially of all people, since you are a family friend, a childhood friend, of just all of it. So it's really an honor to be here. Yeah, so I own an interior design, feng shui, and interior psychology consultancy firm in Los Angeles. And of course, over the last year, it's been really interesting because at the beginning of lockdown in the spring of last year, I realized that going into people's homes was really difficult. And I had always worked with different modalities, interior psychology folding into my interior design process, and of course, different spiritual aspects, sacred geometry, feng shui. But last year, I realized that I would have to pivot more to Zoom, which now I'm fully set up for. And what was so exciting about that is I had the time and space to really develop interior psychology as its own standalone process that I now do on Zoom and in person in LA. And that was really exciting for me because I had always been using the techniques, but I was able to now direct them very specifically to someone who was going through depression, who may not be interested in interior design, but just wanted to essentially look at how their environment may be triggering them for stress, for depression, for just a feeling of being overwhelmed. And then when you and I were talking about really creating intimate spaces, that's something that is so important because the environment soaks up everything that's going on in our internal life. And then at the same time, it's influencing our internal life, our emotions, our thoughts, our belief system, how we behave, how we think of ourselves behaving. And then it also affects our relationships or our belief that we can manifest a relationship. It essentially sometimes can articulate when there is one strong voice or power control in a relationship where one person doesn't feel like they have a voice and the other person is whether they know it, perhaps subconsciously taking control. And all of that can be revealed in the environment. Just like when we get overwhelmed, immediately the environment shows us one way. Of course, is clutter. That's the most obvious way that an environment can show us indications. But even in a beautifully designed home where everything is exactly in its place, even in an environment like that, there may be things that are affecting us adversely that we may not be aware of. So interior psychology is a way to really view that from a different point of view, and then suggest ways to use the environment to support what we need emotionally or in terms of our goals.
Yeah. And as I was preparing for us to talk, I was reminded of a story from one of my teachers and my gurus in the field, Dr. Bill Staten. He had a couple that came into him, and they just couldn't get their sex life handled. They loved each other and they wanted to, have more intimate, romantic, sexual experiences, and they just couldn't make it happen. So Bill gave him some exercises, sent him home, the sensate focus. That's, the core of our work. And nothing was working. He goes, I want to see your bedroom. So he goes, makes a house visit, right? And he walks in the bedroom, and there on his side of the room on a dresser is all of his family members. And then on the other side of the room, on her side, on her dresser, is all of her family. And Bill said something like, nobody could get off in this room. The entire family is staring at you. So they rearranged their room and it transformed their relationship. So that's why I'm so excited what you're doing. I mean, I heard this 30 years ago as a story of what a couple weren't, paying attention to or realizing. So it can be as simple as that, and then even larger into how is the room rearranged, or would it be more fun to have a softer mosaic color over here or something, like that's what I'm picturing your work.
Yeah, well, yes, that's that. I love your example. That I would say is a way. Also feng shui, that's a feng shui rule, I should say, in terms of never having any family members in your bedroom. And feng shui and interior psychology certainly overlap in different ways. And I love what you said. It can be very simple, and it can also be very complex. I think part of it is starting to get a sense of the dynamic. And once you understand the dynamic and how someone's sensitivity level and what the needs are of the person and what is being supported in the environment for those needs, and then what is radically not, and looking at the couple, are both of them articulated in the design, that alone can be really profound. When one of us is uber articulated and the other one isn't, it's really like a 50s model in some way. In some way, the male in the 50s, I was not alive in the 50s, but was essentially controlling the household in terms of being the breadwinner, and not, certainly not in all cases, but in many cases. And then the woman, the female in that relationship, if we're looking at just the relationship, the cliche relationship from the 50s at least, was driving the decor, but there wasn't always this understanding to who this couple is as an identity and who these individuals are in terms of an identity, and understanding how those can weave together becomes really dynamic.
Mhm.
The space should represent our true self. And like you said, a lot of times people can't articulate that. It's really difficult for most of us to really understand what our physical sensibility is. Many people have a just a natural inclination to know their style, and it really comes from within. It's not contrived, it's not put on to be something. But there are, I would say, a large part of the population doesn't really know who they are in terms of that. And so sometimes they're living in an environment that doesn't really have a correlation to their true innate self. And that is really tricky. We all have different contradictions that live within us. We're usually not just one straight thing. And when you find those little nuances underneath the surface of someone that may be more conservative in terms of the way they comport themselves on the surface, then you can find these little magical aspects. And when they get into their home or their office, they're surrounded by the things that really support their self-esteem, it rather than just being surrounded by their exterior way of fronting themselves, which can be more tied to their insecurity.
Wow. Yeah, really true. And you bring up a really good piece that I hadn't thought of even when you and I were talking before is like in the 50s, you had a certain kind of bed and dresser. You had certain kind of sofa and curtains. And so it was that normal thing where you fit into the box of, well, this is what everybody has.
Right.
And so where is that unique, your own fashion? Just like, people that pick up on, well, this is the latest fashion, and it certainly isn't something they should be wearing. But it's
Yeah.
the latest thing. And so we get caught in this. And as you know, I'm writing a book called Am I Normal If?
Yeah,
And
I love it.
it can go to your fashion too. Like, am I normal if I don't want to wear that mini skirt, or whatever it is that comes down the pike, or if I don't want that big heavy furniture in my home anymore? Because back in the day, it was big heavy furniture. And
Right.
so, so the fashion industry, the home furnishings industry kind of dictates what we should be doing on our exterior and interior, and what you're addressing and saying, no, wait, you don't have to go with what's the latest fashion or the latest furniture.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. And I think that for me, I'm always aware of what is happening, of course, in modern day. When if I'm designing a commercial environment, of course, I've got to be in line with, you want your customer to come through and understand that you're modern and you're on the forefront of style of if you're a boutique, let's say. So I want to always be aware of that, but allow the person to show who they are. And there's no right or wrong. I mean, you can do every single type of style. I can't think of one style that I don't see something special in, because if it's coming from the authentic self, then that's really neat. And it doesn't have to be, you can be in an environment that has nothing to do with your sensibility, but you feel someone else's heart. And then that becomes really special in itself. And there's always a way to add a high level of taste and artistry to every single style. But I think it really does take bravery to not stay with societal mores, or keeping up with the Joneses, which, as you said, the 50s seems to be, as we look back, so much about that, about being in the pocket of what is considered normal. And it's so much more fun to just be who you are, and who you are may not have anything to do with what other people are doing.
Yes.
So, that's like the biggest joy in life.
Yeah, and you and I spoke also about the diversity of your work, like that you can go in and design what you're talking to, what you're speaking to, the interior psychology of somebody that lives alone, right?
Yeah.
They don't have to
Yeah.
be partnered. I mean, and we're
Yeah.
we're big on diversity here in our work, and we want to celebrate and explore diversity. And so someone that's on their own or coupled or multi-coupled, like
Absolutely.
people,
Yes.
all kinds of people are starting to formulate housing arrangements and how they live together. So I think your work is even needed more where there's more input, like different people and different styles. How do we find harmony and relationships that extends from, as we spoke before, you with you, and then you with others. So that's
Right.
going to be challenging, I would say.
That's right. That's right. You need to have, even in a small urban environment, let's say, there needs to be a place where you can have a full expression of self. And if that's not a room or an entire area within a house, if you're living with one or more people, then just even if it is your chair, your corner, your drawer, even just something of ownership where you can have a full expression of self, feeds the relationship. The more we're connected to our true selves as an individual, then we, as I think you had said earlier, maybe it was when we were just talking offline about how important it is to have two individuals in the relationship, and then allow that what you give to someone else is first what you're giving to yourself. I think you said it in a more articulate way, but then just to paraphrase you. And really, I agree with you so much. I mean, I think that we need to have places to be autonomous, and then we need to have places to connect to others. And if we're living alone, what does that look like? We don't want to feel like we're living in a fishbowl. And I don't mean that literally, like in an all glass house. Sometimes in homes, we have almost too much vulnerability. I see it especially with people who are living by themselves, where they feel like they aren't necessarily grounded. There needs to be a point where they can connect to the outside world, especially in the last year that we've been through. I have been working with so many people that were alone completely during the pandemic. And for people that were alone, that don't already have, they may not be as extrovert, they may not be extroverts in general. And with that, they may have even a propensity to hole up and to be less connected to the outside world. Maybe there was already a propensity for depression in that case. I do have a few clients who were feeling that way, in the last year. And when you have that, there needs to be some connecting point to be vulnerable with yourself, but then connected to something bigger than yourself.
Mhm.
Because we can all feel a sense of isolation, and that sense of isolation both hinders your ability to connect to another person in a real relationship, and it also inhibits us to actually feel connected to the world, so which affects our emotional sensibility.
Mhm.
So looking at all of these different ways to be intimate with ourselves and intimate with someone else. You don't have to be in a relationship to still set up an environment to feel the intimacy with the bigger world or with the outer world. if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a piece that we didn't really even touch on much, is that in bringing you into the IMBT family, where we look at what's going on from the neck up, where we have therapists and EMDR specialists and psychiatrists, whoever's looking at this piece. And then we have the neck down folks who are the embodiment therapists. You kind of bring both in to our therapeutic conversation. And so I can see where, like you're saying, if people are walking around with depression, if they're walking around with anxieties, if they're walking around with, the disconnect from here to here, which is what brings them to us for therapy, you're part of that team now that can help integrate both, which is exactly the work that we're doing. And in a way that has people kind of step into even another piece of themselves that we haven't up till now took a look at addressing. So it's very exciting.
Well, I'm really excited, and I'm really honored to be a part of your team in any way. I love what you do. It's just such beautiful and important work. And as a side note, I cannot wait for your book. Your book just sounds so amazing. The title alone just has me completely excited. So just yeah, I'm really honored. And I think it's just so neat when you start to see all of the ways we're influenced in our lives. And of course, space is just one of many, but it's a way that you can really take control of these dynamics by understanding, when you see the physicalization of something going on internally or in a pattern in your life, and then you realize, okay, I can change this here physically, it immediately is just something that sets you up for a new way of being. And that alone is in the direction of empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
So, every facet of it, all the wonderful work that you're doing and the way that you are helping people to view and understand what's happening inside them and who they are, and really allowing people the permission, or supporting people in the permission to not only take control of their lives, but to say, this is me, and I'm not only okay with it, I'm excited about it. And that it's all just so profound. So yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So tell folks how they best get a hold of you or connect with you.
Yeah, well, thank you. The best way is certainly my website, which has everything. So my company name is Kim Colwell Design, and my last name is spelled Colwell. And really, on the website, you'll find that aside from interior design, full service interior design, I do interior psychology consultations, and I'm very excited, as I said earlier, that I now do them on Zoom. That's actually such an intimate way to do a consultation that I never really realized before. So that's been really neat. And I also do feng shui consultations and home refresh, which is really just looking at your space and thinking about ways that we can make changes with mostly all the stuff you already have, or subtle additions. And then in the last year, aside from doing certification feng shui classes, I have designed a whole slew of wellness classes. And I just was a few weeks ago took the interior psychology to Cornell University, where I was on a panel with a psychologist and an architect. I believe she was from Amsterdam, and we taught to a group of interior design and architectural students who are really starting to walk with and work with this concept of how psychology and design work together. So that's what I've been up to, and my website is just kimcolwelldesign.com.
Perfect. Thank you. And yeah, I'm glad you got to mention about your Cornell adventure. That's so exciting, and it's just telling where you're headed. You know, you started Cornell.
It was really neat, I must say. I mean, I've had some wonderful things over the years, and that I was really excited, and excited to kind of get a sense of what these fresh young minds are up to. And they're already just thinking in such innovative ways. So I was really excited to be a part of that.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I'll let you go. And I just have to mention perfect earrings for this conversation. Your heart.
Well, I wanted
Yes,
to bring a little love sparkle in. So thank you.
every
Yes.
detail.
I'm always changing up my Zooms. I'm just trying to have fun, as
Yeah.
well. And somehow earrings become a thing in this day and age. So thank you, Susan, for
Yes.
noticing my love symbol.
Very perfect. All right. Well, thanks again, and I'm sure we'll talk
Thank you, Susan.
soon. Okay. Bye for now.
Bye.